You're sitting in a cave. It's 40,000 BC. There's no mirror, there's no salon appointment, there's no passive-aggressive stylist who takes 3 inches off when you said 1. There's just you, a tangle of hair that hasn't been touched in months, and a rock. And at some point, one of your ancestors picked up that rock and thought, something has to be done about this. This is the story of how humans managed their hair before scissors existed. Not the scissors in your bathroom drawer, not the ones at the barber. We're talking about the entire span of human history before metal tools, before agriculture, before anyone had the audacity to charge you $40 for a trim. And what we find when we dig into the archaeological and anthropological record is something that should completely change how you think about the relationship between humans and their own hair. Because here's what nobody tells you. Hair wasn't always just cosmetic, it was cultural infrastructure. Let's start with the obvious problem. Hair grows relentlessly, about 6 inches a year, every year regardless of what you think about it. For most large mammals, this isn't a serious issue. Their hair grows to a genetically fixed length and stops. But human hair doesn't really do that. Left entirely alone, it keeps going. Which means that at some point, very early in our evolutionary history, hair management became a practical necessity, not vanity, survival. Long, unmanaged hair is a liability in ways that are easy to forget when you live in a world with conditioner. It gets caught in branches, it obscures vision, it harbors lice, ticks, and a remarkable variety of parasites that would like to make your scalp their permanent address. It can snag on things in ways that are, in the middle of a hunt or a fight, genuinely dangerous. So the question isn't why did ancient humans manage their hair? The question is how. The oldest tools we have that were almost certainly used for grooming date back over 500,000 years. Archaeologists have found sharpened flint flakes, thin, razor-edged pieces of stone that, when held correctly, can cut with a precision that would surprise you. These weren't labeled hair tools. Nothing prehistoric comes with a label. But the shape, the edge angle, and the context in which they're found tell us a great deal. Some show microscopic wear patterns consistent with cutting soft organic material, hair, possibly skin, possibly both. Here's the thing about sharp flint that modern people consistently underestimate. It is genuinely sharp, not sharp for a rock sharp, surgically sharp. Obsidian, a volcanic glass that ancient people had access to across large parts of Africa, Asia, and the Americas, can be knapped, fractured in controlled ways, into an edge thinner than a surgical steel blade. Modern surgeons have actually experimented with obsidian scalpels and found them to produce cleaner incisions than metal. Your ancestor using a flint flake to cut hair wasn't doing something primitive. They were using one of the sharpest tools physically possible. But cutting tools are only half the story, because before you cut anything, you have to be able to manage it, hold it, work with it. And that brings us to something the archaeological record has started to reveal in fascinating ways. Ancient humans didn't just cut their hair, they styled it. The evidence comes from burial sites, cave paintings, and preserved remains found in environments cold or dry enough to prevent decomposition. A 5,500-year-old mummified man found in the Alps, commonly known as Ötzi the Iceman, was discovered with hair approximately 9 centimeters long, trimmed relatively evenly, and containing trace amounts of what appear to be plant-based compounds, possibly used as a kind of primitive hair care product. The man, who lived in roughly 3300 BC, was not dragging around a matted mess. He had managed hair, intentionally. Cave paintings across Europe, some dating back 30,000 years, frequently depict human figures with what appeared to be distinct hairstyles, braids, buns, hair pulled back from the face. For a long time, archaeologists debated whether these were artistic conventions or representations of reality. Increasingly, the consensus leans toward reality. People were arranging their hair on purpose, and they were doing it with tools and techniques sophisticated enough to produce styles worth commemorating in rock art. And here's where fire enters the story. Because fire isn't just for cooking, and anyone who has ever leaned too close to a candle knows this viscerally. Heat changes hair. It can singe it, shape it, and at the right distance and duration, curl it in ways that hold. There's genuine evidence, not fringe speculation, but peer-reviewed archaeological reasoning that ancient humans used controlled heat to style hair. Heated stones, careful distance, a kind of prehistoric blow-dry situation that is either impressive or deeply relatable, depending on how you look at it. There's also the social dimension of hair management that almost never gets discussed, and it might be the most important piece. Grooming in social primates, our closest living relatives, is not primarily about hygiene, it's about relationships. Chimpanzees spend hours grooming each other, not because they are obsessed with cleanliness, but because the act of grooming releases oxytocin in both the groomer and the recipient, bonding them in ways that are neurologically real and socially significant. They're building alliances, maintaining relationships, managing the social fabric of the group through touch. Hair grooming almost certainly inherited this function. The person who helped you manage your hair was doing something that was simultaneously practical and deeply social. The intimacy of letting someone touch your hair is not a modern phenomenon. It is ancient, it is primate, it is wired into us at a level far below conscious thought. It marks transitions, childhood to adulthood, marriage, death, spiritual initiation. It signals group membership. It communicates status. The act of cutting someone's hair has been used as both honor and humiliation across cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. There's a reason soldiers get their heads shaved when they join armies. There's a reason mourners cut their hair in grief. There's a reason a bad haircut feels, on some irrational level, like a minor violation of your sense of self. None of that symbolic weight is accidental. It accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years, during which hair was one of the primary ways humans communicated identity, belonging, and change. So when did scissors actually enter the picture? The earliest metal scissors, two blades connected by a curved spring, appear in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia around 1500 BC. But those were the fancy version. Before metal, people used two sharp blades pressed together, or a single sharp stone held against a flat surface, with hair drawn across it like a cutting board. The mechanics are simpler than scissors, but the result, if you're patient, is functionally similar. The honest answer to how did ancient humans cut their hair is with whatever worked: sharp stone, fire, another person's hands, abrasion against rough surfaces, controlled burning of split ends, which bafflingly is something people still recommend in some hair care circles today. What the evidence will not support is the romantic idea that ancient humans were too primitive, too unsophisticated to care about their hair. They cared enormously. They cut it, styled it, colored it with ochre and plant compounds, adorned it with beads and shells and carved objects, and used it as one of the primary visual languages through which they communicated who they were, where they belonged, and what had happened to them. The tools changed. The symbolic language evolved. The specific styles came and went with cultures that rose and fell and left behind only fragments. But the impulse to look at your own hair and think something should be done about this, that impulse is as old as the species. It may be older. And the next time you sit down in a salon chair and stare at yourself in a mirror, just know you are participating in a ritual so ancient that the first version of it happened by firelight with a piece of volcanic glass before anyone had invented the word for what they were doing.